There's a moment in every broken person's life when they have to choose. Stay broken, or become something else entirely. This is a story about that moment. About a girl who scrubbed blood from marble floors while her soulmates pretended she didn't exist. About twin kings who wore crowns but carried chains. About a bond forged by the moon goddess herself, and shattered by pride. Are you ready? Now, the story. Transition into part 1.
The blood wouldn't come out. She'd been scrubbing the same spot on the marble floor for 20 minutes, her knees aching against the cold stone, fingers raw and pruned in the pink-tinted water. The palace corridor stretched endlessly in both directions, lit by sconces that cast shadows dancing across white walls. Somewhere above, music drifted down from the banquet hall, violins and laughter and the sound of wolves who mattered celebrating whatever wolves who mattered celebrated. She didn't matter. She'd learned that 3 years ago. The brush scraped against marble as she worked, the only sound besides her own breathing. It was past midnight. Most of the palace staff had retired hours ago, but she'd been assigned corridor duty after her kitchen shift, and Omega wolves didn't question their assignments. They just worked until their bones felt hollow and sleep became a fantasy. She felt him before she heard him. The bond, that withered, rejected thing that lived inside her chest like a dying star, flared with sudden awareness. Her hands stilled. Her wolf, that part of herself she kept buried deep, lifted its head and whined. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, moving closer. She didn't look up. Looking up implied she had the right to acknowledge an alpha's presence, and she'd had that beaten out of her, metaphorically and once, memorably, literally, a long time ago. The footsteps stopped. You missed a spot. His voice slid across her skin like ice water. Caden. She knew without looking, knew by the way he stood with his weight on his left leg, by the particular cruelty that wrapped around his words like silk hiding thorns. I'll get it, Alpha, she whispered. She heard him move closer. His boots, custom leather that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime, stopped inches from her wet, reddened hands. The scent of him rolled over her in waves, pine and smoke and something wild that made her wolf whimper and her human half want to run. Look at me when I'm speaking to you. She lifted her eyes. Caden was beautiful the way poisonous things were beautiful. Sharp jawline that could cut glass, dark hair that fell across his forehead in a way that seemed careless but she knew he spent time arranging, eyes like molten amber that seemed to see through her threadbare dress, her skin, straight down to the parts of herself she kept hidden even from herself. He was 25. She was 21. They'd known each other since childhood, back when the twin princes used to play in the training grounds and she'd been just another pack pup, unremarkable except for her Omega status and her mother's position in the palace kitchens. Everything had changed 3 years ago. You've been avoiding the banquet hall, he said softly. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. I was assigned to corridor duty, Alpha. I didn't ask what you were assigned to do. He tilted his head, studying her like she was something fascinating and breakable at the same time. I said you've been avoiding the banquet hall. My brother wants to see you. Her heart kicked against her ribs so hard she wondered if he could hear it. Riker. The older twin by 4 minutes. The one who looked at her sometimes like she was something precious, then seemed to remember himself and turned away. Why? The word escaped before she could stop it, and she immediately wanted to swallow it back. Caden's smile was slow and dangerous, because apparently he's forgotten that Omegas don't question Alphas. He crouched down, bringing himself to her level. This close, she could see the flecks of gold in his amber eyes, could feel the heat radiating from his body. Especially Omegas who were rejected by their fated mates and should be grateful they're allowed to breathe the same air as their betters. Each word landed like a physical blow, finding soft tissue, leaving bruises she'd carry inside where no one could see. 3 years ago, she'd turned 18. 3 years ago, during the lunar ceremony, she'd felt the mating bond snap into place, that golden thread connecting her soul to not one but 2 others. The twin Alpha Kings. Her fated mates, chosen by the moon goddess herself. 3 years ago, they'd looked at her with something between disgust and pity and spoken one word in perfect unison. Rejected. She'd been scrubbing floors ever since. I'll go to the banquet hall, she managed. No. Caden reached out and caught her chin between his fingers, forcing her to hold his gaze. His touch was warm, almost gentle, which somehow made it worse. You'll go to the East Tower. Riker's private study. 1 hour. He released her and stood in one fluid motion. She could breathe again, though the air felt thin, insufficient. And Omega. He paused at the corner, looking back over his shoulder. The light caught his profile, making him look like something carved from stone. Wear something clean. You smell like bleach and desperation. Then he was gone, his footsteps fading down the corridor, leaving her alone with her bucket and her racing heart and the blood stain that still wouldn't come out no matter how hard she scrubbed. Her name was Aria. She hadn't heard anyone say it in so long that sometimes she forgot it herself. In the palace, she was Omega or you, or sometimes just a gesture, a pointed finger, a dismissive wave. Names were for wolves who mattered. The thing about being rejected by your fated mate was that the bond didn't actually break. It just withered, like a plant deprived of water. It stayed alive but barely, a constant ache in her chest that she'd learned to ignore the way people ignored chronic pain. Not gone, just background noise. But she felt them. Always. When Caden was angry, her hand shook. When Riker was stressed, headaches bloomed behind her eyes. When they were intimate with the women they paraded through the palace, beautiful, elegant she-wolves from powerful families, wolves worthy of alpha attention, she felt it like infidelity even though they owed her nothing. She'd gotten good at hiding it. Now she stood in the Omega quarters, a basement room she shared with 6 other low-ranking wolves, stripping off her cleaning dress with fingers that wouldn't quite steady. The space smelled like cheap soap and resignation, with 7 bunks crammed against stone walls and a single small window that showed nothing but darkness. Her bunk was the one in the corner. The mattress was thin and lumpy, the blanket threadbare, but it was hers. She'd learned to be grateful for small mercies. You got summoned. Martha's voice made her jump. The older Omega sat on her own bunk, mending what looked like kitchen linens by candlelight. Her hands never stopped moving, even when she was exhausted. None of their hands ever stopped. Aria nodded, pulling out her only other dress from the small trunk that held everything she owned. Grey fabric, mended so many times it was more stitches than original material. Riker. Martha's expression tightened. She'd been there 3 years ago. She'd seen the rejection, held Aria while she sobbed so hard she couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the bond withering inside her like something dying. Be careful, honey. These alpha games, they don't care who gets hurt. I'm always careful. No. Martha set down her mending and crossed to Aria's bunk. She was 50-something, had been an Omega her whole life, had survived 2 wars and 3 alpha regimes. When she cupped Aria's face in her worn hands, her touch was gentle. You're always scared. That's different. She was right, but Aria didn't admit it. She just pulled away and gathered her things. The communal bathroom was empty at this hour, thank the goddess. She stripped and stood under the shower, lukewarm water that sputtered from old pipes, and scrubbed away the smell of bleach and blood and hard labor. Her body was thinner than it used to be, all sharp angles and lean muscle. 3 years of inadequate food and constant work had whittled away any softness she'd once possessed. When she looked in the cracked mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her hair was dark, almost black, and she'd cut it short last year because long hair was impractical and she couldn't afford impractical. Her eyes were grey, like storm clouds, and they carried shadows that hadn't been there before her 18th birthday. Her face was all sharp edges now, high cheekbones, pointed chin, a mouth that had forgotten how to smile. But underneath it all, she was still her. Still the girl who dreamed of being loved. Still the wolf who felt the bond humming in her veins even now, even after everything. Still pathetic. She shoved the thought away and dressed quickly. The palace was different at night. During the day, it was all gleaming marble and gold fixtures and windows that let in sunshine, a monument to the Twin Kings' power and the Pack's prosperity. At night, shadows pulled in corners like living things. The portraits of dead alphas that lined the walls seemed to watch her pass with judging eyes. Aria had learned the servants' routes years ago, the hidden staircases and back corridors that let low-ranking wolves move through the palace like ghosts, unseen by their betters. But tonight she took the main route, because Caden had given her a direct order and defying an alpha was a good way to end up banished. Or worse. The palace guards ignored her as she walked past. To them, she was just another Omega, beneath notice. She'd learned to appreciate invisibility. The East Tower loomed ahead, accessible through a grand archway guarded by 2 warriors in the king's colors, black and silver. They didn't acknowledge her, but they stepped aside when she approached, which meant Riker had told them to expect her. Inside, A spiral staircase wound upward into darkness. Her legs burned by the time she reached the top, her breath coming in short gasps. Omega rations didn't leave much energy for climbing stairs. Rika's study door was slightly ajar, light spilling through the gap. She raised her hand to knock, but his voice stopped her.
Come in, Aria.
He'd used her name. She pushed the door open with shaking hands. The study was everything she'd expected. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves stuffed with leather-bound volumes, a massive oak desk covered in papers and maps, leather chairs positioned near a fireplace where flames crackled and popped. It smelled like old paper and whiskey and something uniquely Rika, something that made her wolf stir despite her best efforts to keep it buried. Rika stood by the window, looking out over the palace grounds. The moon was nearly full, hanging heavy in the sky, and its light painted him in silver. He didn't turn when she entered. Close the door. She did, her heart hammering so hard she felt dizzy. Silence stretched between them. She'd learned not to speak first, not to assume she had the right to break an alpha's quiet. So she waited, hands clasped in front of her, eyes down, barely breathing. Finally, he turned. If Caden was beautiful like poison, Rika was beautiful like a blade, sharp and purposeful and deadly. He was broader than his twin, more muscular, with the same dark hair but eyes that were more gold than amber, more sun than fire. Tonight he wore a black shirt with the sleeves rolled up, exposing forearms corded with muscle and marked with the tattoos that designated him as Alpha King. He looked at her, really looked, and something flickered across his face too fast to name. "You're too thin," he said. Of all the things she'd expected, that wasn't it. "I eat enough, Alpha. Don't lie to me." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping close enough that she had to tilt her head back to maintain eye contact. Close enough that his scent wrapped around her like a physical thing. "I can hear your heartbeat, smell the half-truths on your skin. You're not eating enough. The omega rations are sufficient. Are you challenging my observation?"
No, Alpha.
The words came out automatically, trained into her over 3 years of knowing her place. He exhaled through his nose, running a hand through his hair. This close, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the tightness around his eyes, the shadows under them that spoke of sleepless nights. "Caden said you've been avoiding the banquet hall." "I was assigned." "I know what you were assigned." He cut her off, but his tone was softer than Caden's had been. Less cruel. More. Something she didn't want to name. "I'm the one who approved the work roster." That stopped her. "You, what? Did you think the head housekeeper decides who scrubs what corridor?" Something that might have been amusement touched the corner of his mouth. "Everything in this palace requires my approval or Caden's. Every assignment, every shift, every task." She didn't know what to do with this information. Didn't know where to put it in the careful structure she'd built to survive. Rika moved back to his desk, poured amber liquid from a crystal decanter into 2 glasses. He held one out to her. She stared at it. "Take it," he said. "Omegas aren't allowed." "I'm telling you to take it." Her fingers closed around the glass. The crystal was heavy, expensive. She'd cleaned thousands of these glasses over the years, polished them until they gleamed, but she'd never held one meant for drinking. Rika raised his own glass. To terrible decisions. He drank. She hesitated, then sipped. The whiskey burned down her throat, warm and sharp and entirely unfamiliar. "Do you know why you're here?" he asked.
No, Alpha.
"Stop calling me that." She blinked. "What should I call you?" "My name." He set his glass down, leaned against the desk in a way that was almost casual. "Almost. We've known each other since we were children, Aria. You used to call me Rika." "That was before. Before I was a coward and broke something I had no right to break." The air left her lungs. Rika was looking at her with an expression she'd never seen before, raw and honest and painful, like he'd peeled back his own skin to show her what was underneath. "You're my fated mate. Mine and Caden's. The moon goddess herself chose you for us, and I, rejected that gift because I was too concerned with politics and appearances and what the pack would think." She couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only stand there holding a glass of whiskey and trying to remember how to breathe. "For 3 years, I've felt you," he continued, his voice rough like gravel. "Every pain, every fear, every moment of exhaustion. For 3 years, I've watched you scrub floors and serve wolves who aren't worthy to speak your name, and I've told myself it was necessary. That the pack needed us to mate within powerful bloodlines. That bonding with an Omega would weaken our rule. He pushed off the desk, approached her again, and this time she saw something in his eyes that made her wolf whimper. Not fear, but something more dangerous. Hope. I was wrong, he said quietly. Her hand trembled so badly the whiskey nearly sloshed over the rim. Why are you telling me this? Because things are changing. The Eastern packs are threatening war. Our allies are pulling back, waiting to see if we are strong enough to survive what's coming. And I've realized something. He reached out slowly, like she was a wild thing that might bolt, and took the glass from her shaking hand. Set it on the desk. The bond we rejected? It's not just some romantic notion. It's power. Aria. Real power. The kind we need if we are going to survive. Her stomach twisted. You want to use me?
No.
He stepped closer, and she couldn't back away because the door was behind her. I want to stop being a fool. I want to accept what the moon gave us. I want. Liar. The word came out sharper than she'd intended, sharper than an Omega should ever speak to an Alpha. But 3 years of pain had built up inside her like pressure behind a dam, and something about standing here, about him saying these things, had cracked it open. Riker's eyes widened slightly.
Aria.
You rejected me. Her voice was shaking now, but she couldn't stop. You and Caden looked at me like I was dirt on your shoes and you spoke one word. Rejected. Do you know what that did to me? Do you have any idea what it feels like to have the moon goddess choose you for something beautiful and have it ripped away because you're not good enough? You were always good enough. Then why? She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, and she hated herself for it. Why did you make me feel like nothing? Why did you let everyone in this pack treat me like I was less than nothing? Why? Because I was weak. The words exploded out of him, echoing off the study walls. Because I was 22 years old and I'd just inherited a kingdom with my brother, and everyone was telling me that bonding with an Omega would make us look soft. That the other packs would see it as weakness. That I needed to choose a mate from one of the powerful families to secure alliances. He ran both hands through his hair, pacing away from her. My father's beater pulled me aside the night of your 18th birthday. He said if I accepted the bond, there would be challenges. That wolves from other packs would see it as an opportunity to test our strength. That we might not survive our first year as kings. Aria wiped at her tears with the back of her hand. So you chose your crown over your mate? Yes. He turned back to face her, and the honesty in his expression was worse than any lie. Yes, I did. And I've regretted it every single day since. That doesn't fix anything. I know. You can't just decide 3 years later that you made a mistake and expect me to. What? Forgive you? Fall into your arms? Accept a bond you already destroyed? The bond isn't destroyed. He moved toward her again, and this time she did back up, her shoulders hitting the door. It's damaged, withered, but it's still there. I feel it every time you're in pain. Every time you're afraid. Every time. His jaw clenched. Every time Caden is cruel to you, I feel your hurt like it's my own. Then tell him to stop. I have. That surprised her. What? You think I haven't fought with him about this? Caden is. Riker shook his head. My brother is complicated. He feels the bond too, but he handles it differently. He pushes you away because having you close hurts him. Because he knows what we did was wrong but is too proud to admit it. That's not an excuse. No, it's not. Riker was close enough now that she could feel the heat of him, could see the gold flecks in his eyes. Nothing excuses what we did to you. But I'm asking, no, I'm begging, for a chance to make it right. Why now? She searched his face, looking for the lie she was certain was there. What changed? He was quiet for a long moment. Then, 2 weeks ago, I nearly died. Her heart stuttered. What? There was an attack. Eastern Pack warriors, a small group, testing our defenses. One of them got close enough to. He pulled up his shirt, revealing a jagged scar across his ribs. Silver blade, poisoned. I should have died. Aria's hand moved without her permission, fingers hovering over the scar but not quite touching. She remembered 2 weeks ago. Remembered the sudden, stabbing pain in her side that had made her collapse in the middle of the kitchen. She'd thought she'd pulled a muscle. Had gotten up and kept working because Omega wolves didn't get sick days. I felt it, she whispered. I know. I felt you feeling it, even through the poison, even while I was dying. And I realized that I'd wasted 3 years. That I might die without ever telling you the truth. His hand came up, covered hers. That I might die without ever accepting the greatest gift I'd ever been given. His skin was warm against hers. The bond hummed between them, that withered thing suddenly sparking with possibility. Does Caden feel the same way? She asked. Riker's expression darkened. Caden is. He's not ready. He's still holding on to the idea that we can find powerful mates, secure the alliances we need the traditional way. So you want me to accept a half-bond? Be your mate but not his?
No.
He threaded his fingers through hers, and the touch sent sparks up her arm. I want you to give me time to convince him. To show him that we don't need political alliances built on loveless matings. That the moon gave us you for a reason. Aria pulled her hand away, breaking the contact. And while you're convincing him, what happens to me? I keep scrubbing floors? Keep being treated like dirt?
No.
Things change starting tonight. He moved to his desk, pulled out a piece of heavy parchment with the royal seal. I'm reassigning you. You'll work directly for me as a personal assistant. Private quarters, proper meals, a salary instead of basic rations. She stared at the document. Why would anyone believe I'm qualified? Because I say you are. Because you're smart, Aria. I've seen you reorganizing the supply closets using a system the head housekeeper couldn't figure out. I've watched you solve scheduling conflicts that would have taken others days. You've been wasted on manual labor. People will talk. Let them. They'll say I'm your mistress. Good. He set the parchment down, looked at her with an intensity that made her knees weak. Let them think whatever they want. I'm done hiding what you mean to me. I don't mean anything to you. You rejected me, remember? That's where you're wrong. He crossed the space between them in one stride, caught her face in both hands. You've meant everything to me since the moment the bond snapped into place. I was just too much of a coward to accept it. His thumb brushed across her cheekbone, wiping away a tear she hadn't realized had fallen. Give me a chance, he said softly. Let me prove I'm not the same wolf who hurt you. Let me earn back what I threw away. She should say no. Should tell him to go to hell. Should remind him that rejected bonds could never be fully restored, that the damage was permanent, that she'd spent 3 years building walls around her heart specifically to protect herself from this kind of hope. But she'd also spent 3 years feeling half alive. 3 years going through the motions, surviving but not living. 3 years wondering what her life might have been if her mates had chosen differently. 1 month, she heard herself say. Riker blinked. What? 1 month. You have 1 month to prove you mean what you're saying. That this isn't just about war and needing my bond for power. That you actually... She couldn't say the word. Couldn't let herself be that vulnerable. That I actually love you, he finished softly. Her breath caught. Ido. Aria. I have since we were teenagers, before I even knew what love was. Why do you think Caden and I fought so hard against the bond? It wasn't because we didn't want you. It was because we wanted you too much, and we were terrified of what that meant. He leaned in slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. His lips brushed against her forehead, gentle as a prayer. 1 month. I'll take it. But I'm going to need longer than that to make up for 3 years of being an idiot. Despite everything, despite the pain and the anger and the fear, Aria felt something crack open inside her chest. Something that felt dangerously like hope. We'll see, she whispered. He smiled, and it transformed his face into something breathtaking. We'll see. The thing about hope was that it made everything else harder. Aria left Riker's study 2 hours later with the reassignment document, a key to her new quarters, and a heart that felt too full and too empty at the same time. The palace corridors were dark, most of the wolves already asleep, and she walked through shadow and moonlight feeling like she was moving through a dream. Her new quarters were in the East Wing, Riker had said. Private room, attached bathroom, windows that actually opened. She'd lived in the basement for 3 years. She'd forgotten what natural light looked like first thing in the morning. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the figure waiting in the shadows until it was too late. Well, the Omega has been upgraded. Caden stepped into her path, and her heart jumped into her throat. He was dressed casually, dark pants and a white shirt unbuttoned at the collar, but there was nothing casual about the way he looked at her. His amber eyes were sharp, assessing, and something else. Something dangerous. "Alpha," she said quietly, dropping her gaze to the floor. "What did my brother promise you?" "I don't know what you..." "Don't." The word cracked like a whip. "Don't lie to me. I can smell him all over you. I can feel the bond practically singing with whatever happened in that study." He moved closer, backing her against the wall. "So I'll ask again. What did Riker promise you?" Her hands clenched into fists. "A job. New quarters. Nothing that concerns you." "Everything about you concerns me, little Omega." His voice dropped to something low and dangerous. "You're my mate, whether I want you to be or not. That bond ties me to you just as tightly as it ties you to me. Did Riker mention that? Did he tell you that I've felt every moment of your suffering for 3 years? That your pain is my pain? Then why? Why didn't I stop it?" He laughed, sharp and bitter. "Because I'm not like my brother. I don't believe in fairy tales. I don't believe the moon goddess knows better than I do about what's good for this pack. And I don't believe that accepting a bond with an Omega will do anything except paint a target on all our backs." "Then why are you here?" Aria forced herself to meet his eyes. "Why do you care what Riker promised me?" "Because he's making a mistake. Because he's letting sentiment cloud his judgment. Because..." Caden stopped, jaw clenching. "Because watching him with you is going to kill me." The confession hung between them like something tangible. "The bond works both ways," Aria said softly. "If you feel my pain, I feel yours. Do you think I don't know that you're suffering too? I've earned my suffering. You haven't. That doesn't make it hurt less." He stared at her, and for just a moment, his careful mask slipped. She saw the same thing she'd seen in Riker's eyes: pain, longing, regret. Then it was gone, locked away behind practiced indifference. "Stay away from my brother," Caden said. "Whatever game you're playing, whatever you think you're going to get out of this, it won't work." "I'm not playing any game." "Everyone is playing a game, little Omega. Some of us are just better at it than others." He leaned in, his breath warm against her ear. "And if you hurt him, if you use this bond to manipulate him or weaken him, I will make your life so miserable that you'll beg me to banish you. Do you understand?" She couldn't speak, could only nod. "Good." He pulled back, his expression cold again. "Your new quarters are on the 3rd floor, East Wing, room 17. I suggest you get some sleep. Tomorrow is going to be very difficult for you." Then he was gone, disappearing into shadow as silently as he'd appeared. Aria stood alone in the corridor, her heart racing, the document clutched in her shaking hands. She'd thought accepting Riker's offer would make things simpler. She was beginning to realize it had made them infinitely more complicated. Room 17 was more than she'd expected. The space was modest by palace standards, a single room with an attached bathroom, but to Aria it might as well have been a palace itself. There was a Real bed with clean sheets and pillows that looked soft. A wardrobe that was currently empty but wouldn't be once she moved her meager belongings up from the basement. A desk beneath a window that showed the palace gardens, silver in the moonlight. She stood in the center of the room and tried not to cry. 3 years. 3 years of sleeping on a lumpy mattress in a basement that smelled like mildew and resignation. 3 years of washing in lukewarm communal showers and eating Omega rations that were nutritionally adequate but tasted like cardboard. And now this. Because of Riker. Because of hope. Because of a bond she'd thought was dead. She moved to the window and pressed her forehead against the cool glass. Outside, the garden stretched toward the forest edge, the trees dark shapes against a darker sky. The moon was almost full, heavy and bright, and she felt its pull in her blood the way all wolves did. Somewhere in the palace, Riker was probably still awake, probably dealing with whatever crisis or decision or political maneuvering required his attention. Somewhere else, Caden was... what? Angry. Afraid. Both. She felt them through the bond, those twin threads that connected her to the two halves of one whole. Riker's thread pulsed with warmth, determination, hope. Caden's thread was all jagged edges and ice, but underneath, buried deep where maybe he thought she couldn't feel it, there was pain. They were both suffering, she realized. Just in different ways. The knock on her door startled her. She turned, half expecting to see Caden again, coming to deliver more threats or warnings. But when she opened the door, Martha stood in the hallway holding a basket. "Thought you might be hungry," the older Omega said, pushing past Aria into the room. "Sweet goddess, would you look at this place? You've moved up in the world, honey." "Martha, what are you doing here? It's past midnight." "You think I could sleep not knowing what happened?" Martha set the basket on the desk and started unpacking it. Bread, cheese, fruit, things from the kitchen that Omegas weren't usually allowed to take. "Now sit down and eat while you tell me everything."
Aria sat.
She was hungry, she realized. Starving, actually. When was the last time she'd eaten? Breakfast. Had there even been breakfast? She ate while she talked, and Martha listened with the kind of patient attention that made Aria remember why she loved this woman. Martha had been her mother's friend, had held Aria when her mother died in childbirth, delivering a stillborn pup 2 years after the rejection. Had been the only family Aria had left. When she finished explaining Riker's offer, Caden's threat, the impossible situation she'd landed in, Martha was quiet for a long moment. "You said yes," Martha finally said. "It wasn't a question. I said I'd give him 1 month. Do you trust him?" Aria thought about it. About Riker's eyes when he told her he loved her. About the scar on his ribs where he'd nearly died. About 3 years of feeling his guilt and regret through a bond he couldn't completely sever. "I don't know," she admitted. "But I think I want to." Martha reached across the desk and squeezed her hand. "Then that's enough for now. Trust is something you build, not something you give away all at once." "What about Caden?" "What about him?" "He threatened me. Said if I hurt Riker, he'd make my life miserable." "He's scared," Martha said simply. "Powerful wolves don't know how to handle fear. They turn it into anger instead." "He's not scared of me."
"No, honey."
"He's scared of what you represent. Change. Vulnerability. All the things alphas are taught to reject." Martha stood, started gathering the empty containers back into her basket. "But that's his problem, not yours. You focus on yourself. On what you need. On whether giving these boys a second chance is something you can survive if it goes wrong." That was the question, wasn't it? Could she survive if Riker broke her heart again? If Caden succeeded in driving her away? If this month ended with another rejection? She'd survived the first one. Barely. She didn't know if she had another survival in her. "Get some sleep," Martha said, moving toward the door. "Tomorrow you start your new job, and I imagine there's going to be plenty of wolves who have opinions about it." "Martha." The older Omega paused in the doorway. "Thank you. For everything." Martha smiled, and it was sad and proud at the same time. "You're going to be fine, Aria. You're stronger than you know." Then she was gone, and Aria was alone in her new room with her new life and her new terrifying hope. She didn't sleep much that night. Morning came too quickly. Aria woke to sunlight streaming through her window. Actual sunlight, not the dim basement fluorescent she'd grown used to, and for a disoriented moment couldn't remember where she was. Then it all came flooding back. Riker's study. The reassignment. Caden's threat. Her new quarters. Hope. She sat up, her body aching from sleeping in an actual comfortable bed. How pathetic was that? 3 years of terrible mattresses had made her forget what good sleep felt like. There was a knock at her door.
"Miss Aria."
An unfamiliar voice. "I've been sent with clothing and breakfast." She opened the door to find a young female wolf holding a tray and a garment bag. The girl couldn't have been more than 16, and she dropped into a curtsy so low it was almost comical. "Please don't," Aria said quickly. "You don't have to." "Alpha Riker's orders, miss. I'm to help you prepare for your first day and bring you to his office at 8. The girl bustled into the room, setting the tray on the desk and hanging the garment bag on the wardrobe door. "I'm Penny. I'll be assisting you with anything you need."
Aria stared.
"I have an assistant." "You're the Alpha King's personal aide now, miss." Of course you have an assistant. Penny opened the garment bag, revealing a simple but well-made dress in deep blue. This should fit. Alpha Riker had it sent over from the seamstress this morning. How did he know my size? Penny's cheeks flushed. The Alpha knows many things, miss. Which meant he'd been watching her. Paying attention. For how long? The breakfast tray held more food than Aria usually ate in 2 days. Eggs, fresh bread, fruit, real coffee that smelled like heaven. She ate while Penny chatted about palace gossip, and Aria learned that 1. Most of the staff had no idea she'd been reassigned until this morning. 2. The head housekeeper was furious about losing an Omega without notice. 3. There were already rumors about why the Alpha King had elevated a low-ranking Omega to such a prominent position. They're saying you must have blackmail on him, Penny said cheerfully as she helped Aria into the dress. Or that you're secretly the daughter of some important wolf he owes a debt to. Or, she hesitated. Or that I'm sleeping with him, Aria finished flatly. Well, yes. I'm not. I know, miss. Anyone with eyes can see the Alpha King hasn't taken a lover in months. He's been too busy with the war preparations. Penny stepped back, assessing her work. You look lovely. Very professional. Aria looked at herself in the small mirror Penny had produced. The dress fit perfectly, emphasizing what few curves she had while remaining entirely appropriate. Her short hair had been combed and styled. She looked different, like someone who mattered. It's almost 8, Penny said. We should go. The walk to Riker's office felt like a march to execution. Every wolf they passed in the corridors stopped and stared. Some whispered. Some didn't bother hiding their shock or disdain. Aria kept her head up and her expression neutral, but inside she was screaming. This was a mistake. This was all a huge mistake. But then Penny opened the office door, and Riker looked up from his desk, and his face transformed when he saw her.
Aria.
He stood, came around the desk. You look different, she supplied. Beautiful. Penny made a small squeaking sound and quickly excused herself, closing the door behind her. Riker moved closer, and Aria noticed he looked tired. Dark circles under his eyes, hair slightly mussed like he'd been running his hands through it. Did you sleep? Some. You. Not really. He gestured to the chaos of papers covering his desk. The Eastern Pac situation is getting worse. We've had 3 more border incidents in the past week. Is that why you need me? To help with the war planning. I need you because I can't focus on anything when I'm worried about you scrubbing floors and not eating enough. He picked up a folder from his desk. But yes, I could also use your help. You have a mind for organization and details that I lack. He opened the folder, showed her maps marked with positions and notes, explained the situation with the Eastern Pacs, how they'd been pushing boundaries for months, testing defenses, making small incursions. How alliances were shifting. How there were whispers that someone was uniting the smaller Pacs against them. Aria studied the maps. You're spreading your forces too thin. Riker blinked. What? Here, and here, and here. She pointed to 3 positions on the map. You've got guards posted at every potential entry point, but that means nowhere has enough wolves to actually repel a serious attack. They'll just choose one weak point and push through. Our military advisor suggested. Your military advisor is thinking like someone defending against random raids. But if someone is actually organizing the Eastern Pacs, they're not going to raid. They're going to invade. Which means you need to identify the most strategically important positions and fortify those heavily, even if it means leaving other areas less defended. Riker stared at her. Then he laughed, the sound surprised and delighted. 3 years you've been cleaning floors, and you're a natural strategist. My father was a warrior before he died. He used to show me maps, explain tactics. She shrugged. I remember. What else do you remember? They spent the next 3 hours going through intelligence reports, maps, supply lists. Aria found herself falling into the work, her mind sharpening on problems that actually mattered instead of which cleaning solution worked best on marble. Riker watched her with an expression she couldn't quite read. What? She finally asked. I'm seeing what I should have seen 3 years ago. Who you actually are instead of what I assumed you were. And what did you assume I was? Less than what you are. I was an idiot. Yes, she agreed. You were. He smiled, but there was sadness in it. I'm going to spend the rest of my life making that up to you. 1 month, she reminded him. You have 1 month to prove you mean that. Then I'd better not waste any time. He reached across the desk and took her hand. The touch sent sparks through the bond, making her gasp. Do you feel that? He asked softly. Yes. It's getting stronger. The more time we spend together, the more the bond heals. His thumb traced circles on her palm. Imagine what it could be if we stopped fighting it completely. Aria pulled her hand away gently. 1 step at a time. 1 step at a time, he agreed. The door slammed open. Caden stood in the doorway, and he was furious. We have a problem. Riker stood immediately. What happened? The western border. There's been an attack, a real one this time, not a skirmish. 24 warriors, maybe more. They've taken one of our outposts. Casualties. 5 dead, 3 missing, the rest retreated to the secondary position. Caden's eyes flicked to Aria, then back to Riker. We need to respond now, before they get entrenched. Agreed. Riker was already moving, pulling maps from drawers. Aria, I need you to.
No.
Caden's voice was flat. She doesn't need to be involved in military decisions. She's been helping me all morning with strategy. She's an Omega with no training and no security clearance. This is pack business, Riker. Not playtime with your pet project. The words landed like slaps. Aria felt her face heat, her hands clench. Riker's expression went cold. Don't. Don't what? Don't point out that you're letting sentiment compromise our security? Don't remind you that the pack comes first, always. The pack is why I'm doing this. Aria saw things in the maps this morning that our military advisor missed. She has insights. She has your attention, which is all she's ever wanted. Caden's amber eyes locked on Aria. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me you're not using this bond to manipulate him into giving you power you haven't earned. I'm not, Aria started. Then leave. Now. Let us handle pack business while you go back to whatever pretty room my brother installed you in. Caden. Riker's voice held warning. That's enough. Is it? Because from where I'm standing, you're making decisions with your cock instead of your brain, and it's going to get wolves killed. Riker moved so fast Aria barely saw it. 1 moment he was behind his desk, the next he had Caden against the wall, forearm across his throat. You want to insult me? Fine. I've earned it. But you speak to our mate with respect or I will make you regret it. Our mate. Caden laughed, the sound vicious. You rejected her. We both did. You don't get to claim her now just because it's convenient. I'm claiming her because it's right. Because the moon chose her for us and we were too blind to see the gift we were given. The moon chose wrong. The words hung in the air like poison. Aria felt something break inside her chest. Felt the bond shudder and crack, Caden's thread going sharp and cold. Riker's hand tightened. Take that back. Why? It's true. She's weak, powerless, completely unsuited to be the mate of an alpha king. The only thing she's good for is exactly what she's been doing, cleaning up messes and staying out of sight. Aria couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The pain was too much, too familiar. It was 3 years ago all over again, hearing the rejection, feeling worthless. Let him go, she said quietly. Riker didn't move.
Aria.
Let him go. He's right.
No.
I should leave. I should never have. Her voice broke. This was a mistake. She turned toward the door, but Riker caught her wrist. Don't. Please. He's wrong. He's just scared and stupid, Anne. He's your brother. Your alpha partner. Your other half. She pulled free. And he's right. I don't belong here. I never did. She walked out before either of them could stop her. Behind her, she heard Riker's roar of fury, heard something crash, heard Caden say something too low for her to catch. She didn't care. She just walked, faster and faster, until she was running through the palace corridors with tears streaming down her face and no idea where she was going except away. Away from hope. Away from possibility. away from the pain of wanting something she could never have. She ended up in the gardens. It was mid-afternoon, the sun warm, and she collapsed on a bench hidden behind a hedge of roses. Let herself sob, let all the pain and anger and disappointment pour out until she was empty. You cry too easily. She looked up. A woman stood on the path, tall, elegant, with silver hair despite appearing to be only in her 30s. She wore a simple white dress and her eyes were the color of moonlight. Who? Aria started. You know who I am, child. Everyone knows me, though few see me walking among them. The woman sat beside her on the bench, and power rolled off her in waves. The question is, do you know who you are? Aria's breath caught. Moon goddess. Some call me that. The woman smiled. Others call me Luna. Some call me mother. I answer to all of them. Why are you here? Because you're giving up, and I didn't raise my children to be quitters. Luna reached out and brushed a tear from Aria's cheek. Do you think I make mistakes when I create bonds? I don't know. I don't. Every bond I forge for a reason. Every mate I choose because they are exactly what their partner needs. Luna's eyes held hers. I gave you to the Twin Kings because you were the only wolf strong enough to stand between them and unite them. I'm an Omega. I have no power, no strength. You survived 3 years of rejection and abuse and you're still breathing. You're still fighting. You're still hoping. Luna's hand moved to rest over Aria's heart. Power isn't always about physical strength, child. Sometimes the strongest wolves are the ones who refuse to break no matter how badly life tries to shatter them. Caden hates me. Caden hates himself. He's terrified of what you represent, of what accepting you would cost him.
Luna stood.
But fear is not permanent. It can be overcome, transformed, defeated. How? By being exactly what I created you to be. By showing both of them that an Omega mate is not weakness, it's the greatest strength they could ever possess. Luna turned to go, then paused. Oh, and child, the war that's coming. You're going to end it. Not through violence, but through something far more powerful. What?
Luna smiled.
Love. The real kind. The kind that transforms everything it touches. Then she was gone, fading into sunlight like she'd never been there at all. Aria sat alone on the bench, her heart racing. The moon goddess herself had just told her not to give up. Had told her she was exactly where she needed to be. She stood, wiped her face, straightened her dress. 1 month, she'd told Riker. She was going to make it count. When Aria returned to the palace, she went straight to her quarters. Penny was waiting, looking worried. Miss Aria, thank the goddess. Alpha Riker has been looking everywhere for you. He's been. Tell him I'm fine. Tell him I need the evening to think. Aria moved to her desk, pulled out paper and ink. And bring me every book in the palace library about pack history and politics. Penny blinked. Every book. Start with the ones about alpha matings and pack hierarchies. Then anything about Omega wolves and their historical roles. Aria sat down, mind racing. If I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. Do what, miss? Aria looked up, and for the first time in 3 years, she felt something like determination settle into her bones. Win a war. Save a kingdom. Claim my mates. She smiled, and it felt dangerous. The usual Omega activities. Penny stared at her for a moment, then grinned. I'll get those books. She left, and Aria sat in the growing darkness, thinking. Caden thought she was weak. Thought accepting her would make them weak. She was going to prove him wrong. Not by fighting him. She couldn't win that way. But by being exactly what Luna had created her to be. The strength her mates didn't know they needed. The war was coming. And Aria was going to be ready.
3 days. That's how long Aria spent locked in her quarters, reading every book Penny brought her, filling pages with notes, building a plan. 3 days of ignoring Riker's messages, his knocks on her door, his pleading through the bond that made her chest ache. 3 days of feeling Caden's cold satisfaction through his thread, his belief that she'd finally given up and would crawl back to the basement where she belonged. 3 days to become someone new. On the 4th morning, she emerged. Penny had brought new clothes, not servant's garb,
but proper dresses befitting someone in the Alpha's inner circle. Aria chose a deep emerald that brought out the grey in her eyes and made her look older, sharper, more dangerous. She'd learned things in those 3 days. Important things. Like the fact that Omega wolves weren't always considered weak. 2 centuries ago, before the Great Wars, Omegas had been revered as peacekeepers and strategists. Their ability to sense emotions and ease tensions made them invaluable during negotiations. It wasn't until the wars, when physical strength became the only currency that mattered, that Omegas were relegated to servitude. Like the fact that Omega bonds with Alphas were actually stronger than Alpha-to-Alpha bonds. The Moon created them specifically to balance Alpha aggression with Omega diplomacy, to create partnerships that could rule with both strength and wisdom. Like the fact that there had never, not once in recorded history, been an Omega bonded to twin Alphas. Which meant she wasn't just rare. She was unprecedented. Aria walked through the palace corridors with her head high, and this time when wolves stared, she stared back. Let them look. Let them whisper. She was done hiding. She found Riker in the training yards. He was sparring with one of his warriors, a massive male named Garrett who'd been with the king since they took the throne. Riker moved like water, all fluid grace and controlled power, and even angry at him, even hurt, Aria couldn't help but appreciate the way his body moved. The bond hummed between them, and Riker's head snapped up. He saw her, and his wolf flashed in his eyes, gold overwhelming amber. Break, he told Garrett, not taking his eyes off Aria. The warrior looked between them, then wisely retreated. Riker approached slowly, like she might bolt. He was shirtless, covered in sweat and the dust of the training yard, and Aria forced herself to focus on his face instead of the muscles flexing beneath his skin. You've been avoiding me, he said quietly. I've been thinking. For 3 days. I had a lot to think about. She held out a folder she'd prepared. These are my recommendations for the border defense, based on the intelligence reports you showed me, cross-referenced with historical attack patterns from the Eastern Pacts. Riker took the folder, opened it. His eyebrows rose as he scanned the pages. This is... Aria, this is brilliant. I know. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face at her confidence. I also have thoughts on your supply chain, she continued. You're spending too much on importing weapons when we have perfectly good forges here that are underutilized. And your patrol rotation is inefficient. You've got wolves working 12-hour shifts when studies show that awareness drops significantly after 8 hours, which means... Aria. Riker closed the folder, stepped closer. I am sorry. For what Caden said. For not defending you better. For... Stop. He stopped. I don't need you to apologize for your brother. I need you to make a choice. She met his eyes. Either I'm your mate and your partner, which means my voice matters even when Caden disagrees with it, or I'm a pet project you're keeping around until it becomes inconvenient, in which case we should end this now before anyone else gets hurt. You're my mate, Riker said immediately. My partner. My equal. Then prove it. Today. Right now. Aria gestured to the palace. There's a council meeting in an hour to discuss the border situation. I want to be there. Aria, the council is all alphas and betas. I know what the council is. I also know that I've spent 3 days studying the situation from every angle, and I have insights they need to hear. She lifted her chin. Unless you think Caden was right. That I'm too weak, too powerless, too Omega to contribute anything meaningful. I don't think that. I've never thought that. Then let me prove it to everyone else. Riker was quiet for a long moment, and she could see the war happening behind his eyes. The part of him that wanted to protect her fighting with the part that knew she was right. Finally, he nodded. Okay. You'll be there. Thank you. But Aria. He caught her hand as she turned to leave. Caden is going to fight this. Hard. I know. And the council, some of them are not going to be kind. I know that too. She squeezed his hand, then let go. But I'm done being scared. I'm done making myself small so other wolves feel comfortable. The moon goddess herself told me I'm exactly where I need to be. Riker's eyes widened. The moon goddess. Long story. I'll tell you later. She started to walk away, then paused. Oh, and Riker? You might want a shower before the meeting. You smell like a wet dog. She heard his surprised laugh as she walked away, and despite everything, she smiled. The council room was exactly what Aria expected. A large circular chamber with a massive table in the center, high windows letting in afternoon light, and walls covered with maps and pack banners. 12 wolves sat around the table, all male, all alpha or beta rank, all looking at her like she'd grown a second head when she walked in behind Riker. Caden sat at the head of the table, and his expression went from surprised to furious in the space of a heartbeat. "No," he said flatly. "Yes," Riker countered, pulling out a chair for Aria. She sat before anyone could stop her. "Absolutely not." Caden stood, his power flooding the room. Several of the council members whimpered and lowered their heads. "This is a closed council meeting. Security clearance only." "She doesn't." "She has my clearance," Riker interrupted. "She's my personal aide and she's been instrumental in developing new defensive strategies. She stays." "This is insane." Caden's eyes locked on Aria. "This is pack business. Alpha business. Not Omega business." Aria finished for him. "Interesting. Because the last time I checked, when the Eastern packs invade and start killing wolves, they don't check rank before they tear out throats. Which means this affects every member of the pack, including Omegas." Silence. One of the council members, an older beta named Marcus who'd always been kind to her, cleared his throat. "The Omega has a point." "The Omega has a name," Aria said quietly. "It's Aria, and I'd appreciate if you used it." Marcus had the grace to look embarrassed. "My apologies, Aria." Caden was still standing, vibrating with barely controlled rage. "Riker, a word. Outside. Now."
No.
Riker sat down. "Whatever you have to say, you can say it here. We are wasting time on posturing when we should be discussing strategy."
Fine.
Caden leaned forward, hands flat on the table. "Everyone in this room knows what she is. What you're trying to do. And it's not going to work." "What am I trying to do?" Riker asked calmly. "You're trying to legitimize a rejected bond because you feel guilty. You're trying to elevate an Omega to a position she's not qualified for because you want to fuck her without feeling bad about it. And you're compromising pack security to soothe your own conscience." The words landed like bombs. Aria felt her face heat, felt humiliation and anger war inside her chest. But she didn't look away. Didn't shrink. "Are you finished?" she asked quietly. Caden's eyes snapped to her. "Excuse me." "I asked if you were finished. With your tantrum. Because if you are, maybe we could actually discuss the border situation instead of your feelings about my existence." Someone made a choking sound. Aria thought it might have been Marcus. Caden's expression went dangerous. "You want to discuss strategy? Fine. What do you think we should do about the Eastern packs, Omega? Should we send them flowers? Maybe invite them for tea? I'm sure your vast experience scrubbing floors has given you brilliant insights into military tactics." "Actually, it has." Aria stood, moved to the maps covering the walls. "While I was scrubbing those floors, I was also listening. To warriors talking about patrol routes. To beta females gossiping about supply shortages. To servants discussing which parts of the palace were easiest to access from outside." She pointed to the map showing their territory. "You're defending everywhere, which means you're strong nowhere. The Eastern packs know this. They're making small attacks to map your response times and force deployment. They're not trying to win battles, they're gathering intelligence for a larger invasion." "That's speculation," one of the council members said. "Is it?" Aria pulled out her folder, spread her notes across the table. "Every attack for the past month has been in a different location. Different times, different strategies. They're not trying to hold territory. They attack, assess your response, and retreat. That's not raiding behavior. That's reconnaissance." Riker stood, came to look at her notes. "She's right. Look at the pattern. They're testing us." "And your solution is what?" Caden's voice was cold. "We can't just abandon half our border. We don't abandon it. We make them think we're abandoning it." Aria traced a line on the map. "We pull warriors back from secondary positions, make it look like we're consolidating defensively. We let them think we are weak and stretch thin. Then, when they commit to a major push, because they will, they're building to something. We know exactly where they'll hit because we'll have guided them there." "A trap," Marcus said slowly. "You want to create a killing ground." "I want to end this quickly with minimal casualties on our side." Aria looked around the table. "The Eastern packs are united by fear of you, of the Twin Kings' power. But unity built on fear is fragile. If we can crush their first major offensive decisively, their alliance will fracture. The smaller packs will sue for peace rather than risk annihilation." Silence filled the room. Then Riker said, "It could work." "It's too risky," someone else argued. "All warfare is risk," Aria countered. "The question is whether you want to take a calculated risk now or wait for them to choose the time and place of engagement."
And you learned this from listening to warriors gossip. Caden's tone was mocking, but there was something else underneath. Something that might have been uncertainty. I learned this from my father, who was a warrior before he died defending this pack. I learned it from reading every military history in your library. And yes, I learned it from paying attention while everyone assumed I was too stupid and insignificant to understand what I was hearing. She met Caden's eyes. You've underestimated me for 3 years. Don't make the same mistake the Eastern packs are making. Caden stared at her, and something shifted in his expression. Not acceptance. Not approval. But maybe respect? Fear? She couldn't tell. We'll take your proposal under advisement, he finally said. Which wasn't agreement, but it wasn't dismissal either. Actually, Riker said, I'm approving it. Aria, work with Marcus to develop the detailed implementation plan. I want it on my desk by tomorrow morning. Marcus nodded. It would be my honor. This is a mistake, Caden said. But he sat down, which felt like surrender. The meeting continued, devolving into arguments about logistics and supply lines. Aria contributed when she had insights, stayed quiet when she didn't. And slowly, grudgingly, the council members started directing questions to her. Started listening when she answered. By the time the meeting ended 3 hours later, she was exhausted but exhilarated. She'd done it. She'd proven she belonged. As the council members filed out, Marcus paused beside her chair. Your father would be proud, he said quietly. He always said you had his strategic mind. You knew my father. Fought beside him for 15 years. He was a good wolf. A better friend. Marcus smiled sadly. He would have hated what happened to you after. Well, after. The rejection, you mean? Yes. Marcus glanced toward where Caden was speaking with another council member. Not all of us agreed with that decision. Some of us thought the Kings were making a mistake, but it wasn't our place to say. And now I think maybe the moon goddess knows what she's doing after all. He squeezed her shoulder gently. Come find me tomorrow. We'll build you a trap the Eastern packs will never see coming. He left, and Aria sat alone at the table, staring at the maps, her mind already racing with plans and contingencies. That was impressive. She turned. Caden stood in the doorway, the last one remaining beside her. Thank you, she said carefully. I didn't mean it as a compliment. He moved closer, and she forced herself not to lean back. You're clever. I'll give you that. Clever enough to manipulate my brother. Clever enough to win over the council. But being clever doesn't make you strong. And when the real fighting starts, when wolves are dying and everything turns to blood and chaos, cleverness won't save you. Maybe not. But it might save them. She gestured to the maps. Isn't that what matters? Saving the pack. The pack doesn't need saving by an Omega. Then what does the pack need? Caden was quiet for a long moment. Strong leadership. Unified leadership. Not whatever this is. My brother divided, distracted, making decisions with his heart instead of his head. You think accepting me makes him weak. I think you make him vulnerable. And vulnerability gets alphas killed. Or maybe, Aria said softly, vulnerability makes him human. Makes him relatable. Makes him the kind of leader wolves will die for instead of just obey out of fear. Caden's expression flickered. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I've watched you both for 3 years. I've felt you through the bond even though you tried to sever it. Riker leads with compassion and wisdom. You lead with strength and fear. You need each other. The pack needs both of you. But neither of you is complete because you rejected the piece that was meant to tie you together. You think very highly of yourself.
No.
I think the moon goddess doesn't make mistakes. Aria stood, gathered her notes. You can hate me all you want, Caden. You can fight this, sabotage me, make my life miserable. But it won't change what I am to you. What I could be, if you weren't so terrified of it. She started toward the door, but his voice stopped her. What are you to me? She turned back. He was looking at her with an expression she'd never seen before, raw and unguarded and desperately confused. I'm your mate, she said simply. The one the moon chose for you. The one who feels every bit of your pain even though you've done everything possible to hurt me. The one who's going to stand beside you whether you want me to or not, because that's what mates do. I don't want a mate. I know. You want power and control and walls so high nothing can ever hurt you. She smiled sadly. But that's not how life works. That's not how love works. And someday, you're going to have to choose. Stay safe and alone behind those walls, or risk everything for something real. And if I choose the walls, then you'll lose your brother. Because Riker has already made his choice, and he chose me. So you can either accept that and let us all move forward together, or you can keep fighting and watch everything you've built fall apart. She left him standing in the council room, and she didn't look back. But she felt him through the bond, that jagged, cold thread, and for just a moment, it flickered with something that might have been warmth. Might have been. That night, Aria worked in her quarters until her eyes burned. She and Marcus had spent the afternoon refining her strategy, turning a concept into an actual operational plan. They'd identified the perfect location for their trap, a valley with limited exit points, defensible high ground, close enough to their main forces to reinforce quickly but isolated enough that it would look vulnerable. Now she was writing detailed deployment orders, supply requirements, timeline contingencies. It was tedious, exhausting work, but she loved it. Loved feeling useful. Loved knowing she was contributing something real. A knock interrupted her focus. "Come in," she called, expecting Penny with dinner. Riker entered instead, carrying a tray. "I dismissed Penny for the evening. Thought you might want some privacy." Aria sat back, suddenly very aware that she was alone with him. In her quarters. At night. The bond hummed between them, warm and alive. "You didn't have to bring me food," she said. "Yes, I did. You skipped lunch, and if I let you skip dinner too, you'll pass out over those papers." He set the tray on her desk. Soup, bread, fruit. Real food, not omega rations. Eat. Bossy. Concerned. He pulled up a chair beside her. "What you did today. Aria, that was incredible. The council members couldn't stop talking about you after you left. Even Caden. Especially Caden, though he'd never admit it." Riker smiled. "He spent an hour arguing that your plan was too risky, which means he thinks it might actually work." Aria picked up the soup, sipped it. It was rich and warm and exactly what she needed. "He cornered me after the meeting." Riker's expression darkened. "Did he threaten you?"
No.
"He was honest. Said I make you vulnerable. That he doesn't want a mate." She set the soup down. "He's not wrong about the vulnerability part. Caring about someone does make you weaker in some ways, but stronger in others." "Yes. Aria, I need to tell you something." Riker reached across the desk, took her hand. "The bond is healing. I can feel it getting stronger every day. And I know we agreed on 1 month, but I don't think I can wait that long." Her heart kicked. Wait for what? To claim you properly. To complete the mating bond. He stopped, searching her face. To make you mine in every way. Heat flooded through her, the bond singing. But she pulled her hand away gently. "Riker, I can't. Not while Caden is still fighting this. The bond is supposed to be between all three of us, and if we complete it without him, it'll force his hand. Make him choose. Or it'll break him." Aria shook her head. "I won't be responsible for destroying your relationship with your brother. The pack needs you both." "The pack needs you." "Then let me prove it first. Let me show Caden that I'm not a threat or a weakness. Let me earn my place before we make it permanent." Riker was quiet, his jaw tight with frustration. "You're asking me to wait when every instinct I have is screaming at me to claim you, protect you, never let you go. I'm asking you to be patient, to trust that this is going to work out the way it's meant to. And if Caden never comes around, then we'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, I need to focus on ending this war and proving I belong. Okay." He stood, paced to the window. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "Do you know how hard it is to be close to you and not touch you? To feel the bond pulling me toward you and have to resist it?" "Yes," she said softly. "Because I feel it too." He turned, looked at her with eyes full of gold. "You want me." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." "Then why?" "Because wanting isn't enough. Because I've spent 3 years being treated like I didn't matter, and I need to know that when we complete this bond, it's because you see me as an equal. Not because your wolf wants to fuck me." The crude words made him flinch. "It's not like that." "Isn't it? You rejected me 3 years ago because I wasn't good enough. Now I'm suddenly good enough because I can help you win a war." She stood, moved closer to him. "I need to know you want me for me, Riker. Not for what I can do for you. Not because the bond is convenient now, but because you actually love the person I am." "I do love you." "Then prove it by giving me time to love you back." She reached up, touched his cheek.
I'm not saying no. I'm saying not yet. He caught her hand, turned his face into her palm. You're stronger than I am.
No.
I'm just more patient. She pulled away before she could change her mind. You should go. Before I do something we'll both regret. He looked like he wanted to argue, but finally nodded. Moved toward the door. Paused with his hand on the handle. 1 month, he said. You asked for 1 month. But, Aria, I'm going to spend every day of that month showing you that I'm worth the risk. Then he was gone, and she was alone with her racing heart and the memory of his touch burning on her skin. She went back to her work, but couldn't focus. Because despite everything, despite the pain and the fear and the very real possibility that this could all fall apart, she was starting to hope. And hope, she was learning, was the most dangerous thing of all. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a chaos of planning and preparation. Marcus proved to be an invaluable ally. He helped Aria refine her strategy, brought her intelligence reports, introduced her to key warriors who needed to understand the plan. And he did it all while treating her with the respect she'd been denied for 3 years. Other council members followed his lead. Slowly, grudgingly, they began to see her as something other than the Omega who'd been rejected. She became Aria, the strategist. Aria, who saved the western border from being overrun. Aria, who might actually know what she's talking about. The palace staff were slower to accept her. Whispers still followed her through corridors. Some wolves refused to acknowledge her, but others, particularly the lower-ranking wolves who'd been overlooked and underestimated, started looking at her with something like hope in their eyes. If an Omega could rise, maybe they could too. Riker was true to his word. He spent every spare moment showing her that he was serious. He consulted her on decisions, invited her to meetings, asked her opinion on matters of state. He brought her breakfast, made sure she ate, forced her to take breaks when she worked too late. He was courting her, she realized. Properly. The way a mate should. And despite herself, despite her walls and her fear and her very reasonable caution, she was falling for him. Caden, meanwhile, avoided her completely. She saw him at council meetings, where he was coldly professional. She felt him through the bond, that constant presence in the back of her mind, all sharp edges and ice. But he never sought her out, never spoke to her unless absolutely necessary. It hurt more than she expected. On the 15th day, everything changed. Aria was in the war room with Marcus, finalizing supply chains, when a warrior burst in. Attack. Eastern Border, Section 7. Full assault, at least 500 warriors. They are pouring through. Section 7. Aria's head snapped up. She moved to the map, her stomach sinking. That's exactly where we predicted. Your trap, Marcus said. They took the bait. Alert the kings, Aria told the warrior. Full deployment, exactly as planned. Go. The warrior ran. Marcus was already moving, gathering papers, issuing orders to the assistants who'd appeared at the commotion. This is it, Aria. This is your plan. If it works. It has to work. Within minutes, the war room filled with wolves. Riker appeared, already in combat gear, his face grim. Caden came seconds later, and for the first time in weeks, his eyes found hers. They hit Section 7. Caden asked. Yes, just like Aria predicted. Riker moved to the map. How long until our forces are in position? 20 minutes for the primary group, Marcus reported. The ambush units are already there, hidden in the high ground. Casualties. Initial reports say minimal. The forward line held long enough for the planned retreat. Aria watched the organized chaos unfold around her, her heart racing. This was it. Her strategy, being put into action. If it worked, she'd proven herself beyond any doubt. If it failed, wolves would die because of her. I'm going, Caden said suddenly. What? Riker looked up. No, you need to stay here and coordinate. You can coordinate. I'm not sitting in this palace while our warriors are dying. Caden's eyes flashed gold. Besides, someone needs to make sure your Omega's clever plan actually works. She's not my Omega, Riker said quietly. She's our Omega, whether you accept it or not. Caden's jaw clenched, but he didn't argue. Just turned and headed for the door. Wait. Aria's voice stopped him. The Eastern Commander, his name is Victor. He's the one who unified the Pax. If you can take him down, the Alliance falls apart. But he's smart. He won't be at the front. He'll be in the rear, coordinating. Caden turned back. How do you know that? Because I've been studying him for 2 weeks. Reading every report, every intelligence brief. He's brilliant but cautious. He never risks himself unnecessarily. She moved to the map, pointed. He'll be here, at this ridge, where he can see the whole battlefield but retreat quickly if needed. You're suggesting I abandon the main fight to hunt one wolf. I'm suggesting that cutting off the head will end this faster than winning the battle. She met his eyes. Trust me. Something flickered in his expression. Then he nodded, once, and was gone. Riker came to stand beside her. He listened to you. He listened to logic.
No.
Riker's hand found hers, squeezed. He listened to you. That's progress. For the next hour, they monitored reports coming in from the battlefield. The plan was working. The Eastern Pack warriors had committed fully to the valley, thinking they were overwhelming a weak position. Then the ambush units had sprung from the high ground, and the retreating warriors had turned and counterattacked. The Eastern Packs were trapped. Casualties mounted on both sides, but the numbers favored them. Aria watched the map, calculating losses, adjusting deployments, and tried not to think about the fact that each reported death was a real wolf with a family and a life. This was war. This was what she'd signed up for. Then, Alpha King Kaidan has engaged Commander Victor. Heavy fighting at the rear position. Aria's breath caught. Through the bond, she felt Kaidan's battle rage, his wolf fully unleashed. Felt pain spike through his thread. He was injured. How bad? Riker demanded. Unknown. But he's still fighting. The minutes crawled past. Aria found herself pacing. Her hand pressed to her chest where the bond ached. She felt every blow Kaidan took, every surge of adrenaline, every. The thread went cold. No, she whispered. Riker's head snapped toward her. What? What's wrong? Kaidan. Something happened to Kaidan. I can't feel him. Panic clawed at her throat. Riker, I can't feel him. Riker grabbed a communicator. Status on Alpha King Kaidan. Now. Static. Then. He's down. Repeat. Alpha King Kaidan is down. Commander Victor had silver weapons. Kaidan took a blade to the chest. We don't know if he's going to make it. The world tilted. Aria heard Riker roaring orders, felt him move away from her, but she couldn't focus. Couldn't breathe. The bond thread that connected her to Kaidan was still there but fading, like a light dimming. He was dying. Her mate was dying. I need to go to him, she heard herself say. Absolutely not. Marcus appeared at her side. The battlefield is no place for. He's my mate. I need to go to him.
Aria.
Riker gripped her shoulders. Listen to me. Kaidan is being transported back here. The healers are preparing. The best thing you can do for him is stay here and help me coordinate the rest of the battle. But, please. His eyes were desperate. I need you here. I need you to be strong because I can't. His voice broke. I can't lose him. I can't lose both of you. She understood then. Riker was terrified of going to the battlefield, of leaving her here vulnerable, of having to choose between protecting his brother and protecting his mate. So she made the choice for him. Go, she said. Go to Kaidan. Bring him home. I'll handle things here.
Aria.
I'll be fine. Marcus will protect me. But Kaidan needs you. She pushed him gently toward the door. Go. Now. He hesitated one more second, then shifted partially, bones cracking, muscles rippling, and ran. Aria turned back to the war room, her heart breaking, and did what she did best. She worked. Kaidan was dying. Aria felt it through the bond, that thread growing weaker and weaker, flickering like a candle in the wind. She felt his pain, his wolf struggling to heal, his human side slipping away. And she kept working. Because that's what he'd need when he woke up. He would wake up. He had to wake up. He'd need to know the battle was won, the pack was safe, the plan had worked. Reports came in. The Eastern Pack Alliance had shattered when Victor fell. The remaining warriors surrendered or fled. The battle was over. They'd won. But the cost? 53 wolves dead. Another 100 wounded. And Kaidan, their Alpha King, hovering between life and death in the healer's ward. Aria gave orders mechanically, coordinated the wounded, arranged for burial rites, sent messages to allies, did everything that needed to be done while her heart bled and the bond thread grew weaker. It was past midnight when Marcus finally forced her to stop. You need to see him, the old beater said gently, before it's too late. He wouldn't want me there. I think you're wrong about that. Marcus guided her toward the door. Go. I'll handle things here. The walk to the healer's ward felt like walking to an execution.
The head healer, a stern woman named Mora, tried to stop her at the door. Only family is allowed. She is family, Riker's voice came from inside. Let her in. Mora stepped aside, and Aria entered. The ward smelled like blood and herbs and death. Caden lay on a bed in the center of the room, so still he looked like a corpse. His chest was wrapped in bandages that were already seeping red. His skin was pale, his breathing shallow. Riker sat beside the bed, holding Caden's hand, and when he looked up at Aria, his eyes were devastated. Silver poisoning, he said hoarsely. It's in his bloodstream. The healers are doing everything they can, but it might not be enough, Mora finished grimly. Silver is anathema to our kind. If we can't purge it from his system in the next few hours, his wolf will die. And without his wolf, the human side will follow. Aria moved to the other side of the bed, looked down at Caden's still face. He looked younger like this. Vulnerable. Nothing like the cruel, cold alpha who'd mocked her and rejected her and made her life hell for 3 years. He looked like the boy she remembered from childhood. Before everything went wrong. Is there anything that can help? She asked.
Mora hesitated.
There's one thing. But it's not guaranteed, and it requires. She looked at Riker. What? Riker demanded. What requires what? The mating bond. Specifically, an Omega's bond. Mora's eyes moved to Aria. Omegas have healing properties in their bond energy. It's why they were historically so valued. If you completed the mating bond, if you fully accepted both kings, your Omega energy might be enough to purge the silver from his system. Silence. It might work. Aria asked. It might, but it also might not. And completing a bond with a dying wolf is dangerous. If he dies while bonded to you, the backlash could kill you too. Aria looked at Caden's still face, at Riker's desperate expression. She thought about 3 years of pain, 3 years of rejection and humiliation, 3 years of Caden treating her like she was worthless. She thought about the moon goddess telling her she was exactly where she needed to be. She thought about love, real love, the kind that transforms everything it touches. Do it, she said.
Aria, no.
Riker stood. You can't risk your life. He's my mate. Of course I can. She looked at Mora. What do I need to do?